Welcome to the Girls Abroad podcast with Jordy and Santi.
We've been living abroad for the last 2 years. We share our highs and lows, our tips and tricks, and life in our 20s. Welcome back to the Girls Abroad episode 6. This episode is all about traveling smart. Travel is exciting, it is fast, it is fun, and there are endless opportunities.
There are unplanned downsides that are inevitable, and we're going to talk about how to avoid them. We're going to start off on a real note here. You need to accept that things are not going to go to plan. And I saw this book, I think it was called This Book Will Save You or something like that. And it talks about how the first thing when you're in an emergency situation, the first thought that a lot of people will have is that this can't be happening to me. This wouldn't happen to a little old girl from Whangarei. And that actually gets you into trouble. So if you're feeling like your gut is going off, you're feeling like something's off or something's not going to plan, go with it and just plan your steps ahead for if the worst case scenario were about to happen.
Same goes for movies. Taken is the movie I'm referring to, and you're like, I'd never put myself in that situation. But
it'll get to you. It is inevitable. Like, you'll have thought that you had your visa booked already. You would think that you had that flight booked or accommodation. You get there, it hasn't been booked, and you've got to just think on your feet. And I think it's just important to note, first of all, stressing and panicking will get you absolutely nowhere in travel situations. Okay, I started off with the worst case scenario about if an emergency happened, if you were being kidnapped, follow your gut. I mean, always follow your gut, but these are also just in the smaller inconveniences that come with travel. If, your flight's been delayed 12 hours, what do? You just have to go with it. I mean, do what you can to avoid it, sure. Go talk to the right people at the counter. Just don't panic. Don't stress. Things are going to go wrong. It's going to be fine.
And preempt it. I think that's the main thing, is be prepared for anything to happen. So make sure your bags are packed correctly, especially your carry-on luggage. Are you prepared for a possible 12-hour layover?
Also, if there are other people in the scenario with you, maybe it's an airport staff, maybe it is somebody who's contributing to the situation, there is no point in getting stressed with them. There really isn't. It's not going to solve the problem. Read other people's characters, read how to approach them, read how to communicate with them, and go with that. Now that we've gone over the acceptance that things might not always go to plan, we're going to get into how to prepare before you go traveling.
First thing that you need to do in preparation for any kind of trip overseas or domestically, whether you are planning for possible emergencies to happen or not, is making sure that your bookings and itineraries are almost foolproof. So booking wise, I think a really good tip is to double check your booking dates and your booking times. I think a lot of different websites use 24-hour time, but some don't. So little things like that, double check before you pay. And are you the type of person to pay an extra amount of money to get flexible flights? Another thing is, if you're using external sites like Expedia, Skyscanner, Webjet,
it's always better to book directly through the airline if you can, because if there are any plans that change, it is just so much easier to directly deal with the airline. But yes, Skyscanner and those websites are going to provide you with the cheaper prices probably.
And if you're multi-citying, then you're going to get a better price there, because you're inevitably going to be using different airlines. So if you've got a flight from this place to this place to this place, you're going to have to go through different airlines anyways, but you just need to really double check. Like, I will spend probably 2 weeks just keeping an eye on flight dates, flight times. What airport is it? Because a lot of big cities have multiple airports. And same thing, if you're using those external websites, they're not usually giving you baggage. So check that. And if you're going from airline to airline, the baggage amounts change, and you do not want to get stuck at the airport trying to pay per kg because one carrier was 25 kgs and then your next carrier was 20 kgs and then you got screwed over.
Check the distance as well from your accommodation to your hotel. Check how long it usually takes to check in at the particular airport you're going to. Because coming from Singapore, we're so spoiled. We could check in under an hour and be onto the plane, really.
Yeah.
But that's just not the case with most places. In Europe, I was standing in line for 2 hours in Malaga to just check in.
Yeah.
You know, that, and luckily I got there a lot earlier. If I had gone there an hour and a half like I do in Singapore, I would have missed my flight. So just think of those things beforehand as well. It's really just covering all your bases.
Yeah.
You want to cover all of your bases. And we are planners. We like our itineraries. Yes, if you're going for that spontaneous holiday, sure. Do the thing where you book your plane ticket and like your first accommodation spot and figure it out. There's, you know, an experience in that in itself. But most of the time, if you're not going for that kind of experience, just get organized and do your research ahead of time.
The next stage would be the fact that you need to pack strategically. So kind of going back to the booking online with your baggage allowance, make sure you know that. Make sure you've got scales at home or somewhere available to you to be able to weigh. Because again, you don't want to get to the airport and have to take things out. If you are carrying on luggage, make sure you know the liquid amount. I got screwed over in my recent flight to Melbourne. Sorry, ma'am, that's 200 mils. I was like, the limit is 200 mils. He's like, no, it's 100 mils.
Mm-hmm.
Dang.
And you're not getting that back.
No. I was like, here you go. Here's my face wash. Use it wisely. Once at night times. 3 times a week. But like, it's so much wasted money if you have to get rid of things. But then going back to actual packing, do you know the destination? Do you know the climate, the weather, the temperature, the season? What activities are you doing? Make sure you're packing strategically.
I want to almost say underpack with your clothes and overpack with everything else. I've never thought of that before. It only came into my mind right now. I am an overpacker for clothes, but get packing cubes as well. They are fantastic. My favorite travel item, especially if you're also backpacking and you don't have a full wardrobe to hang up your clothes and stuff.
But even toiletries, like you don't have to pack those all the time. And if you're in hotels, it's provided. Yeah.
Don't go overboard, because also the place that you're traveling to will probably have some things that you want to buy, and you don't want to be using your full kilo limit on the way to somewhere.
Yes.
This episode really is catered more towards if you don't have heaps of experience with travel. Just want to preface that. So if we get into budgeting as well, how we both probably like to do it is over budget. Be generous with how much you think you're going to spend, because the worst thing you could do is go overseas, blow all your money, and you're left with nothing. And you just don't want to be in that situation. You want to go on your holiday, be carefree. So budget your money. Have a look at menus of like restaurants of the places you're going to. Research how much like a meal can cost, as how low, how high. Find an average and budget that way. Think of the activities you'd want to do.
And this is all kind of going back to an itinerary. That's why that's really important, is knowing how many times you're going to be eating out. And it is really important to over budget. I always suggest buying your tickets, booking your accommodation really early. One, that saves you money, but then you kind of know you're chipping away at all these big costs that are going to add up at the end. Whereas if you've booked prior and then you've kind of gotten probably half of the amount of your expenses out of the way already.
Mm-hmm. I think it can be really daunting as well when you're thinking of budgeting, especially if you're maybe in your earlier 20s. For example, you're going to travel in 8 months to a year's time. So there's quite a lot of time still before you're going. Just worry about your flights first. And then in those 8 months to 1 year, you can save for the activities, the food, the spending that you're going to do on that trip as well, your travel insurance.
Yeah. And honestly, Google it. I really like to Google how much does it cost for a solo traveler in Vietnam for 7 days. And there's so many blogs and websites that have kind of collated data from lots of different people sharing their information. And it gives you an approximate, but it's helpful to kind of know. Changing between currencies, sometimes you're like, I don't understand that this is going to cost me 4,000 Turkish lira. I have no idea what that means.
ChatGPT is your best friend.
There you go.
Go on to ChatGPT. Say you're going to Japan for 7 days. You can type on ChatGPT, write out a 7-day itinerary. You could even say, I want to stay in Kyoto and Tokyo only. And add on costs for meals with restaurant accommodations. It's just crazy how advanced it is. So use ChatGPT to your advantage. I think a lot of people go without travel insurance. And being somebody who's been in the hospital a few times,
don't do it.
Just get the travel insurance. You really think that you're immortal when you're in your early 20s. You're like, nothing will happen to me. Nothing. It could. Just do it. It's really not that expensive.
No, it can be like, if you find good places, again, shop around, and usually you can pick, like, are you traveling worldwide? Are you traveling just in Asia? Just in Europe? Travel insurance is a must. Just do it. And that kind of leads us into the next part about avoiding things like scams. If you're in a privileged country or a privileged town where that's not overly something that happens, you forget about the big wide world.
Different countries have different flavors of scams. Europe, I think they're so clever with their scams. Just go with your gut. I cannot stress that enough. Just go with your gut.
And you can say no. So I'm not a no person, but they will forget about you in about 10 seconds time. So don't feel that guilt of, oh, but they look old, they need money. If your gut is telling you this is fishy, just be like, no, thank you, and walk off. If you can speak a different language, use that.
Play dumb.
Yeah.
I think that it's important to note, especially if you're solo, it is so important to stress that it is okay to say no. A lot of people are uncomfortable with saying no and they want to go along with it, or they think, ooh, this might be an exciting travel story, or do it for the plot. Don't do it for the plot. Just be careful and be okay with saying no. And there's a way to do it politely. You don't need to scream in anyone's face. You can say, look, I'm actually on my way to somewhere. Thanks so much. No, thank you. There was a moment where my gut was just feeling really off in Barcelona. And then my last night I stayed in the Gothic Quarter. This one evening I was walking to meet some friends and I was walking alone. It was maybe like sunset time. So it was bordering, it was getting darker. My gut told me something and it could have been a different story had I not listened to it.
And that's why you need to over budget, because I'm thinking New York. My parents had left New York and I was still there. My brother was still there with me. And he was like, oh, just catch the underground to the airport. And my brother, he's a big boy.
He can fend for himself.
He can very much fend for himself. Here I am. I can do like a hiss, huss, huss, but that's probably about it. And is that going to get me anywhere? No. So I ended up having to pay an $80 Uber to the airport. But I think absolutely worth it. Just like out of fear. Sometimes you just know, you're like, this is not the right place for me to be. This is not the right thing I should be doing. Other people are doing it, yes, but not for me.
Just because the crowd is doing it doesn't mean you should as well. If you're staying in a hostel and everybody's going to this thing, it'll be fine. I'm in a group, but your gut's just like, oh, I don't know. This feels weird. Maybe there's a bad apple in the crowd of people that are going. I don't know. Just don't go. It is so not worth it. So keeping in mind your comfort and safety, we do want to just touch on taking full advantage of the travel experience. You've done the work beforehand. You've planned your itineraries. You've saved. You've over budgeted. You're following your gut.
You got your travel insurance.
That's right. Time to enjoy.
Yeah.
Like fully immerse yourself in the experience. Learn other people's stories. Try the local cuisines.
Also, prepare yourself. If you're going to a country that speaks a different language, learn some of that language. The things that are going to help you get by, but also greetings, thank yous, pleases, just really simple questions just to help you maneuver around the new country. That's really important.
They are so happy when you try and speak their language as well. They are just like, overjoyed. Maybe not France. In my experience, they're like, stop trying. But everywhere else, they're pretty impressed when you even just say a hello or a thank you. To conclude, prepare, organize, book, but enjoy. Now we're going to get into our last segment, Quick Fire 5. And we are going to list 5 things that we think that are travel must-haves.
First one, super duper important, is a portable charger. So a power bank, because you never know how many photos you're taking out throughout the day, how many videos you're taking throughout the day. Google Mapsing things, it drains your battery really quick on your phone. And in all honesty, you don't want to get trapped somewhere needing to Google Maps yourself back to your accommodation or your family, whoever you're meeting up with, and you've run out of battery.
As I said earlier on in the episode, for me, it's packing cubes. Even if I'm just going on a quick weekend trip and it's just my carry-on, you better bet you I am using my packing cubes.
Number 3 would be moisturizer and lip balm. Those planes are hella drying, especially for your skin, but I mean, on a day-to-day basis, you won't catch me without my lip balm anyways. If you don't have those, you realize big time that it's really drying. So yeah, I think it's really important to pack a moisturizer and a lip balm.
I always, on my carry-on, pack like my cleanser, moisturizer, body soap. Like I have everything packed in case I'm stranded or something.
The minis. You need a little minis pack of everything.
For me, another travel must-have is my Kindle. As much as physical books are lovely, it's just not practical. So pack your Kindle, because you also never know when you're going to be out of Wi-Fi or 3G and you need some entertainment.
Yeah.
And your Kindle's there.
And if you've booked like a cheaper flight, sometimes they don't have the screens. Also, sometimes they don't have the USB cord to charge your phone. So a Kindle is always a good backup. Number 5 is a plastic water bottle. Don't come at me for the plastic water bottle, but hear me out here. So some airlines let you empty your water bottle and take it through the check-in process on your plane. Some airlines don't, and you have to leave it behind. If you have a plastic water bottle, you are safe, because if they say, sorry ma'am, sorry sir, you're like, here you go boss, and you can move on with your life. With the plastic water bottle, there's no downside to leaving it behind, but if you get to take it through and fill it up on the other side of your check-in, then you've still got your water. The only thing plastic water bottles are handy for.
So that rounds up our Quick Fire 5 segment and our episode. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you for episode 7.
Peace!